Hello, Leslie.
Hi, good to see you.
Yes, I'm so grateful we get to sit down and talk today. So, at Great Laurel Adventures, you've created something that's truly special with this Guatemala trip. And I want to create a space where we can let folks hear your voice and kind of hear the passion behind it, especially for those that have been sitting on the fence about joining us, which is majority of the people that have been watching or like keeping tabs on my Instagram. I keep getting to like, I'm thinking about it, or it sounds great. And I always hear like that little hesitation but in their sentence. So I wanted to kind of address some of those questions I know a lot of people have. But overall, for those of you who are listening and don't know, this is Leslie Prescott, founder of the Great Laurel Adventures. You have a mission that is to make adventure travel more accessible to women. With over 20 years of planning travel experiences, you are aiming to remove the logistical headaches while still preserving the freedom of adventure without the luxury price tag, which is definitely something that stuck out to me with this trip. I was kind of like, whoa, that's how much it costs. Do you want to touch on that a
Yeah,
little bit? Kind of like the pillars of Great Laurel?
yeah. So, travel is definitely a passion of mine, and I've been doing it for a long time and planning it for others, and also dragging my friends and family along on my different ideas. So, one of the things I discovered is like travel doesn't have to be that expensive, particularly if you really are thoughtful about the places that you go. You can still have a very nice experience without having to pay these huge prices. And so, when you see that, on other travel that's going to similar destinations, doing similar things. It's not necessarily that the quality is higher. It's just that there's just a bigger markup on it.
Sure.
And so for me, it was like I realized that I could charge a higher price for it. But at the same time, it's like I know that I want it to be accessible to as many people as possible. And for some people, um, the cost can be prohibitive for being able to travel. And so I wanted to be have it more accessible to other people.
Sure. And as someone who's never been like a tour or group travel trip consumer, it was always because I saw those big price tags and I was like, oh, I could just figure this out myself. Probably wish somebody could have given me a better itinerary to a lot of the places I traveled to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And there is, of course, yeah, you can go ahead and do it on your own. There is what I discovered through this, which I do a lot of, going on my own, but what I discovered through this is there is a huge plus to small group travel as well, because you're sharing these experiences with other people. And for some people, it's like, I would love to go do this, but I don't have someone to go do it with. And so this provides an opportunity for you to have these experiences that you could have on your own, but you get to share it with a small group of people.
Yeah. And what I love about specifically with the small groups, 6 to 12, you have this like army of support around you, folks that are having the same experiences with you. So you kind of get to like spread the fears and the conquests together.
Yeah, and it's nice to have people around you, but it's like when you keep it under 12, it doesn't feel like you change the dynamics of a place when you go into it. So it's like you're not a big tour bus
Mm.
showing up, but at the same time, it's like you do have people around you that are going through the same things together.
Today, I wanted to talk through what this specific November Guatemala trip feels like beyond the itinerary, because anybody can kind of read through on either of our pages kind of what they're gonna experience exactly day by day. But beyond that, I want to address some of the common hesitations that some folks have had that's kind of like held them back from committing to a trip like this. So, for someone who's never been to Guatemala or has ever done a group trip like this, what might surprise them most about this experience specifically?
I think one thing that would surprise you about Guatemala is just how beautiful the landscape is and how different we'll start off the trip in the colonial city of Antigua, which is just, it's one of those things if you've ever been to different colonial cities in Latin America, that Antigua is one of the larger and most well preserved. So it's just beautiful. And then of course it's surrounded by these volcanoes and it just feels I don't know, it's just it has a very unique feel to it, and I think it's very so I think it's the surprising of how just the beauty of the place. And then surprising about group travel, I think just the friendships that you make. You know, you're only together for a week, but we kept laughing and making jokes about like, haven't we been here a year? Because, and not in a bad way, but because it's definitely one of those things where you just, when you're having so many different experiences, it really feels like you're there so much longer than if you just go someplace and you're doing the same thing every day. The days kind of blend into each other, but when you're having a different experience every day, you know, you look back at the beginning of your trip and you're like, that felt like a year ago that we were here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and just, you know, really the last time we did this trip in April, just getting back together and having these conversations about all the different things that we had that I think that, you know, is unique to group travel that you're just not going to have if you were doing it by yourself or even with, you know, a friend. There are times where we're together eating group dinner and we're doing our group activities, but you also still have your own space. So,
I love that urge for adventure is the common thread between these group trips. But then when you're out there, you're like, we're like a random group of folks that are just here in the middle of the world somewhere, but it all feels so like magical and like you said, it's like you feel like you've known these people your whole life
yeah.
and you've all come together because of this like this fire in you, this like need to see uh different parts of the earth that feels kind of random and when you leave those group settings it can really make you just be like wow, life is totally worth living.
Yeah. And, you know, just finding those things that, yes, you're all brought together by, you know, this idea of adventure, but you also like find out you have a lot of other things in common too, like different life experiences. You know, I just think the more you're able to get to know other people, of course, you're not going to have everything in common. Of course, there's probably going to be things that you totally don't see eye to eye on, but you also really are like, oh my goodness, we had this thing that I didn't know anybody else that had, you know, or just that really, you know, brings you together. And I definitely saw a lot of that on the April trip. So it's
Oh
very
sure.
interesting.
I mean, I see that just in my like half day waterfall trips here in
Yeah.
Asheville. You know, I'm like with a group of people that this group of people would never be in the same room together
Yeah.
other than this
Yeah.
moment right now. We can't deny that this moment we're having is just so epic and incredible. None of that other stuff, the disagreeing on whatever lifestyles, whatever doesn't matter in that space. So,
Yeah.
okay, so shifting into something that comes up a lot, especially for women
Mhm.
traveling in Central America for the first time. Let's talk about safety a little bit. So, what would you say to
Okay.
someone who feels a pull towards this trip, but is still carrying a little fear around and nervousness around the safety of Guatemala or the locations we'll be in?
Yeah. So I think that's totally valid. I also think that we tend to fear what we don't know, you know, or that
Mm,
we haven't experienced before. And so I know the first time that I went to Guatemala, I definitely had a lot of reservation. I had no idea what to expect. And this was, you know, over 20 years ago. And now when I go back, I'm like, what was I even afraid of? But, you know, you don't know when you've never been there before. So all the places that we're going are very safe as long as you
mm.
practiced, you know, basic, you know, things that you would do anywhere. You know, be aware of your surroundings. If something doesn't feel right, just don't like be flashing large amounts of cash on the streets, things like that. So, you know, things can happen anywhere. The places that we are going are, I think, would feel very safe. And, you know, talking to everybody that just went on the trip, you know, I did, you know, feedback form and just was there any time that you ever felt unsafe? And no one expressed anything, you know, like that. So I think a lot of it is just like when it's something that's unfamiliar or something that you have never experienced before. It's just you don't know what to expect. And certainly there are places in Guatemala that are unsafe, places